Did you know Arnold had a child with his housekeeper? How much time did he spend in prison? And why didn't they want him in Hollywood movies at first? Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's July 30th, 1947, and Arnold Alois Schwarzenegger is born in the small Austrian village of Thal. His father Gustav is a police officer. Arnold and his older brother Meinhard grow up together under his tough discipline, raised by a man accustomed to getting respect and instant obedience. Arnold must wake up early every morning to fetch milk from a neighboring farm. Then he has to do a series of exercises his father leaves him on a sheet of paper before he earns the right to eat breakfast. Later in the afternoon, when little Arnie finishes his homework, his father takes him and his brother out to practice soccer. They stick to this grueling routine come rain or come shine. Gustav was a curling champion in his youth and teaches his sons to be physically fit. His active upbringing soon sees 10-year-old Arnold getting into soccer, his first competitive sport. He plays passionately for 5 years. At age 15, Arnold's coach decides to bring players to the gym once a week to work out and stay in shape. That day, Arnold's whole life changes. The young athlete is fascinated by the size of bodybuilders at the gym who lift huge weights, and he immediately falls in love with the sport. As Arnold later wrote in his biography, "This was it, my life, the answer I was looking for. Everything was right, as if I was moving on a wobbling bridge and finally stepping on solid ground." The boy soon discovers he has an amazing muscle-building ability. In just 2 years, he passes up most of the trainers at the gym, where he regularly practices like crazy. One Sunday, his gym is closed, but Arnold doesn't hesitate, breaking a window to get inside so he can keep training. Arnold's father isn't very excited about his new obsession. Later, in Arnold's room, he finds a poster of a muscled, half-naked man and calls a psychiatrist for his son, who assures his parents that this is just a phase in young Arnold's life that he will soon grow out of. But, as you know, he couldn't be more wrong. 17-year-old Arnie realizes that bodybuilding is his ticket to worldwide fame. He spends many Saturdays at the local movie theater, watching bodybuilders who've become stars on the big screen. They use their muscular physiques to break into the film industry, and that's exactly what young Arnold dreams of doing too. But first, in 1965, in order to fulfill his civic duty, he joins the Austrian army. He's ordered to serve as a tank driver. Shortly after joining, however, he's invited to take part in Mr. Europe's junior competition in Stuttgart, Germany. However, no soldier is allowed to leave the army base. But Arnold is so sure he's destined to win this contest that he escapes from the base so he can make it to the competition. He climbs the base wall with only the clothes on his back and just enough money for a train to Germany. He arrives practically empty-handed and has to borrow both shorts and sunscreen to compete, but he still manages to overwhelm his competition. And that evening, at the age of 18, Arnold is declared the new Mr. Europe. Despite winning his title, the army doesn't forgive him for going AWOL, and he spends 7 days in military prison on a concrete bed with only a blanket. After his compulsory military service, Arnold gets a job at his gym in Munich as a coach. This is an ideal opportunity for him to train for the next Mr. Europe. In the gym, he exercises twice a day like crazy, and soon he enters Mr. Europe to compete again. He wins for a second time, impressing everyone, even the judges who offer to pay his expenses so he can travel and take part in the global bodybuilding competition, Mr. Universe. But he chooses instead to focus on smaller competitions in Europe because he thinks he's still not good enough for the world stage. But when Arnold arrives at his next competition, he's surprised by how many fans chant his name. Everybody is astonished by his physique. He's the first bodybuilder in Europe with a biceps circumference of 20 inches. Unfortunately, he ends up in second place, which doesn't sit well with him. He returns to Munich, where he plunges himself into training with even more enthusiasm. A year later, Arnold Schwarzenegger becomes the youngest Mr. Universe in history. After this huge success, he's contacted by bodybuilding guru Joe Weider, who invites Arnold to Miami for more competitions and eventually to move to California to work for him. In September 1968, Arnold Schwarzenegger arrives in the United States with only his exercise bag, $20 in his pocket, and speaking virtually no English. He finds a small apartment in Venice Beach and gets by with a little financial help from Joe, who uses Arnold's photos in his bodybuilding magazine. Arnold's plan is to only stay in America for a year, absorb the strategies of local bodybuilders, and use this knowledge to defeat them at their own game. Only after 2 more years of exhausting training and learning from the best, Arnold's bodybuilding dreams come true. He wins the Triple Crown of Bodybuilding and the titles Mr. Universe, Mr. World, and Mr. Olympia. He's now absolutely dominating his sport, and he wins more and more competitions. 6 Mr. Olympia titles in a row speak for themselves. Even though Arnold is on top, he's ready to push his limits even further. He wants to become a famous actor. His coach, Joe Weider, gets a call from a movie production company looking for a bodybuilder to play Hercules in New York. Joe immediately recommends Arnold, and the filmmakers are so impressed they give him the role. Arnold's first and least known film doesn't bring him immediate fame. He is credited on screen as Arnold Strong, and his voice is dubbed over to mask his thick Austrian accent. But despite this, he still receives a $10,000 payday, funds he later invests in California real estate. Arnold finds himself longing for more roles, but soon finds that Hollywood isn't quite ready for him. Several movie agents tell him he doesn't have the ideal qualities he'd need to become an actor. He has a long name that's hard to pronounce, a strange foreign accent, and an unusual appearance that nobody is looking for in movies. But for Arnold, this feedback gives him exactly the motivation he needs to keep trying. In 1974, he begins taking acting lessons and wins a part in Stay Hungry, playing, you guessed it, a bodybuilder. But his hard work pays off, and he manages to win a Golden Globe for Best Newcomer in the film industry. Then, in 1977, the famous documentary Pumping Iron is released, which tells the story of Arnold winning Mr. Olympia over Lou Ferrigno. But Lou Ferrigno quickly gets his revenge, beating out Arnold for the title role in the series The Incredible Hulk, which Arnold also tried out for. Pumping Iron eventually lands him some small roles in comedies like The Villain and The Jane Mansfield Story, less prominent performances in Arnold's career. But his next win at the 1980 Mr. Olympia contest lands him his breakthrough role as Conan the Barbarian. After spending a year improving his English pronunciation and practicing sword fighting, he travels to Yugoslavia and Spain to shoot for 6 months. Conan the Barbarian earns more than $100 million, and along with the sequel, Conan the Destroyer, makes Arnold a world-famous actor. After Conan, Arnold accepts a role in what was originally going to be a small, low-budget film shot by the then-unknown director James Cameron. But of course, you know we're talking about The Terminator. This role surprisingly becomes the most iconic of his career. Arnold plays a robot sent from the future back to the present to kill the mother of the boy who is destined to save the world from evil robots. This role is perfect for Arnold. According to his Hollywood agents, everything that had once made it difficult for Arnold to be a successful actor now worked to his advantage. His distinctive accent and physique make him an ideal candidate in the role of a robot killer from the future. Terminator is a worldwide box office blockbuster, earning $4 million in the first week alone. Arnold is named International Star of the Year later in the 1980s, due in a large part to Terminator's success. On April 26, 1986, he marries Maria Shriver, who's a member of the Kennedy family. After their honeymoon, Arnold leaves for Mexico to shoot his next action movie, Predator. Predator is another huge box office success, starring this now world-famous actor. The film generates an incredible $98 million in profits in the United States alone. But Arnold doesn't just want to be an action star, and so he turns his talents to comedy as well, starring in films like Twins and later in Kindergarten Cop. Because he's always interested in public events and wants to have more influence on things happening around him, in 2003, Arnold announces on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno that he is running for governor of California. After his very successful campaign, he wins the election. It just wouldn't be like him if he hadn't committed fully to his new role. As governor, he is very interested in environmental issues, and in 2006, he signs an agreement making California the first state to take action against greenhouse gas emissions. Arnold's term as governor ends in January 2011. A few months later, the media reports Arnold's affair with his longtime housekeeper, which results in a baby. He and his wife Maria end their 25-year marriage, and Maria and her children move to a family home in Brentwood. His political career may be behind him, but Arnold still continues acting. We can see him in movies like The Expendables, Escape Plan, and new installments of the Terminator franchise. His long and successful career has helped him build a net worth of an incredible $400 million. But through it all, Arnold has never stayed far from the world of bodybuilding. He's even started his own bodybuilding competition, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic, now one of the largest professional competitions in the world, second only to Mr. Olympia itself. At the age of 72, Arnold still prides himself on his physical fitness and works out every day. He's achieved everything he's ever wanted to, all thanks to hard work. He tries to pass the knowledge he's gained on his exciting journey to younger generations. Even at his age, he's learned to use several social media platforms where he's very active, sharing inspirational and motivational messages. Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man who meets every challenge he sets for himself. Thanks for watching to the end. If you like our videos, please subscribe to help us create more content.